All right, welcome back. Hour number 3. Monday night, busy Monday night. Mitchell Henderson joins us now for this hour. Mitch is a remarkable authority on a wide range of subjects, most of which are just not talked about. We're going to discuss something this hour that has been talked about, but I am firmly expecting to hear things from Mitchell Henderson that I've never heard before about the murder of Martin Luther King Jr. Mitchell, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. This issue has been discussed over and over again by people for a long, long time. Your experience in intelligence in the past, was this a topic that was sort of well known among the intel community, or was it just not talked about? Where did you come by your knowledge of it?
Well, actually, I came by it through my father. Let me give you a little background. He was a World War II and Korean War Navy vet. And when he got out, he went into the Border Patrol from 1953 until 1963. In 63, he went to work for the Immigration and Naturalization Service, Criminal Investigation Service. So,
he was there when he was working the border when Eisenhower pulled off Operation Wetback. Then, correct?
Yes, he was. Yes, I have a letter of appreciation he got for his part in that operation.
Interesting.
As a matter of fact, so
yeah, our last patriotic move to protect the country from invasion, I think.
Yes. So, anyways, when he was in the Border Patrol, let me go back to how this all connects up. When he was in the Border Patrol, he worked with a guy named Robert Greene. And Robert Greene was just a Border Patrolman. Now, to be a Border Patrolman, especially in those days, you had to speak fluent Spanish. Right. So there's many Border Patrolmen that left the Border Patrol and actually went to work for the CIA. So my father knew lots of CIA people, and he was even asked to come over to the CIA. But he didn't go. He had a stable job, and he was where he wanted to be. At any rate, Robert Greene was patrolling the border on horseback one day when he was chasing someone, and his horse ran him into a tree, and a limb of the tree poked his eye out. And that ended his career with the Border Patrol. But he still spoke excellent English and Spanish, so he went to work for the CIA. Okay? So he remained friends with my father this whole time. He traveled throughout Latin America working, but then he finally settled in Atlanta, Georgia, and worked at the CIA office in Atlanta, Georgia. This is 1968. And that's where my father was an immigration officer in Memphis, Tennessee. So his headquarters, actually, his boss was in Atlanta. So he went there from time to time, and he talked to Robert Greene and visited with him. Well, Robert Greene came to Memphis during the garbage strike in 1968, where Martin Luther King was leading the march. And he basically... he didn't let my dad in on everything that was going on, but he told my dad on the day that Martin Luther King was assassinated to not go downtown, to not go into the city at all, and to just keep everybody at home because there was probably going to be some turmoil that day. Okay. So Martin Luther King got shot that day. Okay. And Robert Greene goes back to Atlanta. Okay. And then he gets a call. It was only like 4 or 5 days later after the assassination of Martin Luther King. And the CIA and the Immigration Service told him to proceed to Knoxville, Tennessee, and pick up Mike Catroni and put him on an airplane for Canada. The Catroni family, Jeff, was the Montreal Mafia.
Can you spell that for me? Catrona, am I hearing?
Yeah, it's Troni.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so what they told him is Mike Petroni had shot Martin Luther King, and he was supposed to immediately go back to Canada so that nobody could question him. But they found out that he was hanging out in a bar in Knoxville. And so they told my dad, you go get him, and you get him on a plane for Canada and get him out of the country because, he's the guy who shot Martin Luther King, and we need him out of the country. Okay.
Right.
So my dad said he went to Knoxville. He found Mike Petroni in the bar where they said he'd be. Then he took him to the airport and put him on an airplane for Detroit. Well, he had to go with him to Detroit, but then he drove him over the bridge into Canada to take him back. So my father was actually like an accessory after the fact. And he didn't know what was happening before, but he knew after. Okay, now to clean this up, keep in mind that between 1975 and 1985, the Petroni crime family was wiped out. I mean, killed. Just about everybody in the family was killed because they knew too much. And
really, so wholesale slaughter. They just eradicated them. Wow.
They had the Rizzuto family go in and take over, and they had them just kill the Petronis. Okay, so that was to keep it quiet. Okay, the Rizzuto family was allied. I think they were allied with the Banana family, if I'm not mistaken, out of New York. I might be wrong about that, but they had American allies and stuff, and it was the CIA that encouraged them to do this. Okay, so which was important for other reasons that I'll get to later. Okay, so Robert Greene was the CIA case officer who set up the assassination of Martin Luther King. And my father had to go pick up the guy that actually did the shooting and get him out of the country before he caused any suspicions to be arose about him.
Yeah. Got it.
So that's your shooter, and that's your CIA agent who made it happen. Okay. And then when James Earl Ray got captured, he had basically flown to Portugal, and James Earl Ray, well, he was a petty criminal. He didn't really have good resources. He didn't have the resources to get to Portugal and get a fake passport and stuff. That was all provided for him. But he was street smart enough to figure out that once he got to Portugal, that the CIA was going to kill him over there, and then everybody would be quiet because he was going to be the patsy for the crime. They were going to accuse him of the shooting, and if he was dead, he couldn't refute it. Well, he figured this out and flew back to Great Britain, knowing that if he was extradited to the States, they couldn't give him the death penalty. Then when he got back to the States, my dad's kind of telling me all of this. This is like inside information he had. And he said when he got back to the States, they didn't want a trial because they didn't want any evidence coming out about anything. They wanted him to just take a plea deal. They would spare his life, and he could stay in prison and shut up, okay, about everything. And my dad told me this in 2008, just before he died. And he told me this because he basically wanted me to know and wanted me to understand what our government did. For example, he said that he was sure that the CIA had Kennedy killed, JFK killed. And I met a guy in Costa Rica. I don't know if you remember a guy named Robert Lee Vesco. He was involved in Watergate.
Sure I do. Mustache, I remember him.
Smuggling.
Yep.
Yeah. So he lived in Costa Rica, and actually I when I got out of the Army the first time I was in Costa Rica, I ran around with his kids. So I met this guy named Norman.
Oh, funny.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. So, I used to, me and my friends used to party with him and stuff. Okay. So, he had Vesco's accountant was a guy named Norman LeBlanc, who was from Montreal, Canada, and who had worked for the Catroni crime family back in the 1960s and so forth. So
when there still was a Catroni crime family.
Yeah, when there still was a Catroni crime family, and he had mentioned, and I have seen this actually noted in other places that he was suspected of it, but he actually said that he is the one who purchased the rifle that was used to shoot Kennedy. Okay. So what the United States CIA does, okay, so instead of hiring some Americans to go kill other Americans, they would get crime families to do it, especially foreign crime families. Now, I want you to realize that this is not something that we quit doing. We have continued to do that. We have never stopped doing it. Okay. We still, since the order was put out, I think it was by President, I think Nixon or Carter. One of them put out an executive order saying that the CIA would not assassinate people. And once that order was put out, what they did is they just had they made contacts with crime families to do the assassinations for them.
So that's how it's done. They just farm it out. I got it. Yeah.
They just farm it out. And the people they farm it out to, they will train them and stuff. For example, when I was working with the Cali cartel in Colombia, they told me that the U.S. CIA Special Forces, the Israeli Special Forces, and the SAS from Great Britain trained a lot of Medellin cartel hitmen, and those hitmen were the guys that they would use to do hits all over the world for them. They would work for Israeli, British, and American intelligence services to do assassinations.
So worldwide hits are us, and they just send them anywhere.
Oh yeah.
Here's your passport. Here's your money. Here's your cover. Here's your target. Go get them. Right.
So and then when the Medellin cartel fell, well, the new cartel that does that for us is the Zetas cartel of Mexico, because they're militarily trained and disciplined people. They're not just. They're actually the Zetas are not just a drug cartel. They're also a political force in Mexico. Okay, and they're a military force.
So they're a contract. They're a contract organization. They do work.
Right.
This is really fascinating. People in this country don't understand how many murders there are in Mexico. In one 10-year period, there were over 100,000 murders in Mexico. Not all related to the cartels. Many are, but it's just it's a wide open place for death down there. It's bad.
Oh yeah, I think I just saw today that they had 27,000 deaths last year in Mexico, just in 2018.
1 year. Wow.
In 1 year. So at any rate, so yes, they just as they use criminal organizations, okay, to carry out their assassinations. Well, once the FBI pretty much did away with the mafia, that's when they really had to go to these drug cartels and stuff to get them to provide the hitmen and stuff.
What you're saying, Mitchell, is that the war on drugs just ain't what it's supposed to be. How funny.
No, it's a money maker.
What a joke. It's all such a joke. Oh.
Well, listen,
Deadly.
anytime they declare war on something vague, like war on drugs, that's a declaration of war on the American people. It is not anything else. I may have mentioned this before, but it's like one time I ran into these college students that had created this designer drug. It was really poison. They were selling it as Molly or ecstasy, but it wasn't. It was a designer drug, and it could be fatal very easy. But they were selling it by the kilo. They were making it and selling it by the kilo to gangs. Okay, so I bought some samples and I took it to the DEA and I said, okay, well, let's see what this stuff is, you know. So they did an analysis and identified what the drug was. It was a methcathinone type drug. These are drugs derived from the plant khat that is used in like Yemen and Somalia.
Yeah, K-A-T, khat. Yeah.
Yeah, khat. So, anyways, I said, well, are you interested in, I'm well connected with these guys. We can take this down. They're selling poison to basically college students and stuff. And the DEA official asked me, he says, well, do they own homes? I said, well, no, they're like college kids. They says, well, do they have big bank accounts? And I said, well, not yet. He says, do they own fancy cars? And I said, well, not yet. They're just starting their business, but they're putting poison out there that's going to kill people. And the DEA said, well, they have no money to seize. They have no property to seize. So we're completely uninterested in it. In other words, their job is to seize money. It is not to protect human life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? They can care less if people die on this poison or not. What they care about is how much money are they going to get from making the arrests, okay, and all the seizures that go along with it, okay.
Sounds like a link to the fentanyl trade now.
Well, yes. Let me tell you.
Not a direct link, but there's an overlay here.
Here's the thing, Jeff, is that the drug war has to keep going. They do not want success because it makes lots of money. It makes money for the police department. It makes money for state police. It makes money for the federal police. It's a big income source for them, okay, because they get to seize all the money that all the pushers make, okay, and all the traffickers make. So part of the deal of them doing hits for us too is sometimes we turn a blind eye to what they're bringing into the country. And I have a real sense that is a failure. That, like, when I became a police officer back in 1980, a kilo of heroin cost $250,000 wholesale, which people could make a profit off of that. Right now, I can just go downtown, and probably within an hour or two here, I can buy a kilo of heroin for $16,000. Does that spell success in the drug war, or does that spell failure? Heroin is actually cheaper than Vicodin is.
I've heard stories like this. The availability of drugs, the prices now have made it just a universal. It's so easy.
Oh, yeah, it's cheaper to buy heroin than to buy a Vicodin tablet.
Unreal.
So that's it. So all this is tied together. It's all done. Listen, another indicator of this too is the banking system that's used. The banks that the CIA uses are the same banks that mafia and drug cartels use. So let me give you a rundown. So up until 1973, they used the Franklin National Bank, which was tied to the Vatican Bank in Michelle Sindona. If you watch Godfather 3, it's a fictionalized thing about the Vatican Bank and the Franklin National Bank and stuff. It was a big scandal at the time. Lots of people were killed to keep them quiet and stuff, but that was the CIA bank. Well, it collapsed in 73. So a new bank took over, the Nugent Hand Bank, out of
Yes.
Australia.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it laundered money for both drug running and CIA operations. Okay, so Mr. Nugent committed suicide allegedly. Okay, Michael Hand, who was an ex-special forces guy that served in Vietnam, was the other guy that set up the bank, and he fled to Fiji and disappeared. Okay. And then after that, the next bank that they used was the BCCI Bank, which, they made a movie called The International with, I forget who the actor is, Clive Owen, I think, and Naomi Watts. And it was a big bang for money laundering. And actually, when I was working in Latin America for operations I did, we used the BCCI Bank. Okay. But at the same time that my Cali cartel operation was going on, there was another operation going on to take down the BCCI Bank for money laundering. Okay. Now, to understand this, you have to understand that the DEA and Customs is perfectly okay with busting the the CIA. They will arrest them if they have to.
Now, that's interesting. That's very interesting in and of itself. Let me hold that thought.
Okay.
The DEA has no problem arresting CIA operatives. Oh,
I know that personally.
Crazy.
That's something I know personally.
All right. Hold on a minute. Mitchell Henderson and I will be right back in just a few minutes. Fascinating material. Okay, let's get right back to our remarkable conversation with Mitchell Henderson, who just told us the DEA has no trouble at all arresting CIA people. That doesn't mean only CIA contracted agents. It means apparently CIA people. Correct, Mitchell?
Yeah, that's correct. The way I found this out is I was actually approached by a couple of CIA agents in Guatemala, and they had a phony business going on at the airport, and so they approached me about maybe exporting stuff to the United States because I had a dummy export-import business in Guatemala City. This is like 1992, okay? So I took the business cards of the guys down to the embassy and talked to the DEA attaché. His name was Tuffy Van Briesen. And I told him, I said, you ever hear of these guys? Because he says, they're trying to recruit me to move drugs for them, okay? And he said, oh, yes, I know these guys. He says, this guy used to be the naval attaché here at the embassy. He works for the CIA now, and the other guy is just a plain CIA guy. He says, that's the CIA. So I said, so I should drop it. And he says, well, no, go ahead and investigate him, and we'll bust him. And I said, well, every time somebody tries to bust the CIA for drugs, what happens? They end up dead, and stuff. So I said, I'm not sure I want to get in that battle. And he said, well, if we made a case, we would take them down. We will throw them in jail, But anyways, getting back to the bank, remember I had said that the BCCI
Bank. BCCI Bank,
the CIA Bank. Okay, then after they fell in 91, the HSBC Bank took over. So the question you always have to ask yourself is think like a cop. Like ask questions and wonder why things happen like they did. Okay. Sometimes things just don't add up. Okay, so the HSBC Bank was the CIA bank, but they were actually caught red-handed laundering money for the Mexican cartels. So
that has been said.
Independent.
Yeah, over on my side,
person finds it.
My side of the business, HSBC was said at one point to be the most rotten, dirtiest bank in the world.
Oh yeah.
Just awful.
So, but what you see, what happened is, and this is where you have to ask questions, is when they were federally charged with this, they made a plea deal to just pay some money. And nobody was identified. Nobody was thrown in jail for laundering money. Okay. And that was because it was also a CIA bank. Okay.
I see.
The current CIA bank is Citigroup. They have been the CIA bank since the early 2000s. As a matter of fact, even everybody in the military, when they have their military credit card to travel with and stuff like that, it is a card. So, but it's the same as like the Nugan Bank. Back during the Vietnam War, like the Nugan Hand Bank, if I deposited money with them, they paid the big 10. So you got 10% interest. Soldiers did got 10% interest on money they deposited with them. Now, Michael Hand was a Special Forces veteran, and he never ripped any of those soldiers off. You got your 10%. You got your money. Okay? They were making money from other things, so they didn't have to rip the privates and the corporals off. Okay, they paid you what they said they were going to pay you and stuff. So if you go back and you look at everything, there's many indicators of what's going on. I mean, people can go on about the JFK assassination like crazy, but let's step back and look at Eisenhower's parting speech where he warned about the military-industrial complex. Okay, well, he did warn about that, but the real problem began in 1947 when they created the National Security State with the National Security Act, which created the CIA. Okay, now this has moved forward to the point CIA is actually trying to overthrow the President of the United States. Okay, they're trying to run our country now.
When you say they, we're talking about CIA, otherwise known as Deep State in some quarters, but it is the CIA.
Right, it's the CIA, and well, it's better. I like to call it the National Security State because it doesn't just involve the CIA; it involves the Department of Defense, Department of State, even the Department of Justice. They need the Department of Justice on board to cover stuff up. Okay, so they're all involved. So what happened is Kennedy took this to heart. JFK took this to heart because they were really pushing for troops to go to Vietnam because this would be big money for the military-industrial complex.
Yeah.
Well, President Jim of South Vietnam said no combat troops to our country because it'll turn the war into an anti-colonial war and we'll lose. Okay? So we can't have Americans fighting combat here. Well, he was assassinated. And the other guy who was in the way of sending troops there was JFK. He was assassinated 3 weeks later. That's a coincidence that is just not. I mean, okay, that's just we're getting too.
Mitchell, that's another. Excuse me, but that's another of a basket full of qualifying reasons for Kennedy to have been murdered that I've heard about.
Right. There's many. So what he wanted to do is, besides not sending troops to Vietnam, he was okay with some special forces advisors to be down there for years, but he didn't want a full-blown war there. But the military-industrial complex did, and the CIA certainly did, because they are the point people for the military-industrial complex. They're the ones who go destabilize countries and make wars to make money for the military-industrial complex, okay?
Wow.
So consequently, Kennedy was going to abolish the CIA. And well, he never lived to see that done, okay?
Wow.
I'll make a long story short, but so these people have been running the show ever since, and then we can get into 9/11 and how. Well, if you really think that was that those giant buildings could perfectly implode by just airplanes crashing into them, it's beyond absurd to believe that. Okay?
Beyond absurd. Yeah.
beyond absurd. I mean, do you know what it takes to implode a building? If you just go look on YouTube at buildings being imploded, okay, well, sometimes they do a really beautiful job and they bring a building flat down on itself, but sometimes it doesn't work perfectly, and part of the building implodes before the other part does and stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
the skill level required to bring a building down is super high. You have to be very skilled to do it. Mm-hmm. You can do it. But, the bigger the building and the taller it is, the more risk there is for it to fall over onto other buildings. But to bring it down perfectly, I mean, if you look at videos of what is it, Building 7 or something, World Trade Center,
right down in its own footprint.
Nothing even crashed into it, is it? You know, big questions. Okay, so what they did this for is, they have three kinds of operations. They have control operations, where they make things happen that scare people, that make you give up your rights to stuff, give up your freedoms. Okay. Then they have funding operations where they want to be paid more money to do what they do. And you notice it never matters how much more you give them, you're not going to be safer. You'll never be safer. Okay, they'll never accomplish that task. Okay. Back in
Mitchell, a
1985,
question, if I might, about 9/11. The planes that hit the buildings, remote-controlled drone aircraft, the actual planes, the passengers and so forth, apparently nerve gas, something like that. They were all removed. But those planes that hit the buildings clearly were remote controlled. The one had the big pod on the bottom, probably.
Well, also you have to take the sense of integration. Also, you have laws of motion. You have the law of angular momentum. So you have about a 640-ton aircraft traveling at 600 miles per hour. And force is velocity times mass. Why didn't that push the building over?
Right.
It's just that much mass and velocity should have caused a tipping, which it did not happen. That didn't happen. And if you look at the hole in the Pentagon, it's too small for an airplane. It's more likely
it's a
cruise missile.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, let me tell you, Jeff, for many years I didn't ask these questions and stuff. But 2008, before my dad died, he told me so many things. It's like, they had these dirty wars in Argentina, Uruguay, and Chile, where they disappeared people and dropped them out in the ocean and stuff. And then, the liberals in the United States or the left, made a big deal about this. Like, this was so evil to do. And the United States is the one who taught them how to do that. Well, my father said, what Americans don't realize is we weren't teaching them to do something that we weren't doing ourselves. We disappeared. He admitted to me that he disappeared people himself. Okay.
Dad.
Yes, Dad.
Mm-hmm.
He disappeared people.
Mm-hmm.
They were mostly communists that they were disappearing at that time, but they have an enemies list.
We got
So if you flash
we got
forward,
a truckload of communists around now. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, if you flash forward past the Cold War days, did the killing stop? Because what happened after the Cold War? Clinton became president. And how many people have been Arkancided, died during a robbery or some freak accident?
Oh, it's over 100 that we know about, I think.
Yeah. Okay, it just goes on and on and on, There's an FBI
Jeffrey Epstein?
Look at that.
In jail?
That's right. That was a hit. It was obviously a hit. You know? There can't be any question of it. I mean, what it is we've been taught so many false narratives and stuff that our minds never question stuff. And what we should do is like, wouldn't it be nice if you got in trouble and they said, okay, you're charged with this offense, and then you said, okay, well, I'll investigate this. Okay, and of course, in your best interest, you come back and say, oh yeah, I had nothing to do with it at all. Okay, well, what would we expect you to say? Okay, so when the government investigates itself, what is it going to say? Every time,
every time.
It's just normal that they're going to investigate themselves and they're going to vindicate themselves every time. And they're going to point the fingers elsewhere. And where they point the fingers to, if you ever look at it, it's just so improbable. I mean, look at Kennedy. I mean, a failed double agent, Lee Harvey Oswald, he's made into the shooter. Well, he probably really knows what's going on. So Jack Ruby, a mafia guy, again, mafia, who knows he's dying of cancer and will never go to trial. They get him to go shoot
Oswald.
Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah.
Okay. They get him to shoot him. How convenient. Just how convenient. It just neatly ties up the whole package so that there's nobody left. And then the Catroni family, like I said, in the 70s and 80s, they just wiped them all out because they were their hitmen at the time. Okay. The Medellin
James Earl
cartel,
Ray.
when they got done
James
with
Earl
them,
Ray
they
never.
got rid of them.
Yes, James Earl Ray never cracked. Never said anything. Not that we know.
Well, he taught the King family and he told the King family that he didn't do it. Okay, and the King family were, after talking to him, they were kind of convinced that he's not the one who pulled the trigger. Okay, and he was right. I mean, the guy who pulled the trigger, his name is Mike Control. I mean, my father told me the name of the guy who actually pulled the trigger. So, and James Earl Ray was just set up to be. Listen, James Earl Ray was a petty criminal. He was not a professional criminal at all. He was inept. He was incapable. He got caught all the time. Excuse me, but how's he going to have the connections to get the fake passport and to go to Portugal? A guy who's not even been out of Arkansas, Tennessee, or Mississippi.
I get the point implicitly. Yeah.
Right. So I tend to believe what my father told me. I mean, he's telling me this. He died of lung cancer in 2008, and he wanted to tell me this because he wanted me to be aware of what the beast that our government has.
Well, he gave you a great gift of insight, of wisdom. That was.
Oh yes. I mean, he was an American patriot. I mean, he fought in World War II in Korea. He served in law enforcement his whole life. He was a guy that was not a likable guy. He didn't really fit in with the people that he was working with. But what he did and the way he was able to get to retirement was he got things done that other people would not do. They could go to him to do the black bag operations, and he would do them. And then he would be taken care of, They couldn't.
He earned a lot of trust, it sounds like. Yeah.
Right, of higher up people. So even if his immediate bosses wanted to do him in, there's other people higher in the government that would say, no, you can't bother.
He played it really smart, didn't he? He was a very smart man.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was a Kentucky hillbilly. I mean, he was not even, he wasn't a refined, educated type guy. He went to a couple of years of college at Berea College in Kentucky after the war. Okay, but he never got a degree or anything. But he did well in the service of the government stuff. So
Oh, he knew, he had an intuitive talent. He knew what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, and did it. He was a can-do guy.
Yes,
obviously.
He could get things done, and he could keep his mouth shut about it. Okay, but when he was dying, he had no reason to keep his mouth shut about it. He could tell me. Now, I have no way to research any of this. It's like, what are the odds that I could find out if there was a Robert Green working? Well, they don't tell you who's working for them, so they're never going to admit that there was a Robert Green that worked for them. Okay.
Right.
But, my dad, he named names. He said who did what. He said who pulled the trigger and who organized the hit, everything,
Listen, Mitchell, are you,
yes.
Are you green lighted to disclose what you're disclosing? Or are you doing this on your own?
Oh, no, this is on my own. I signed agreements with the federal government on information. Most of that information, it was an agreement that I would not share information that they gave to me. Okay. But that did not include much information that I find out on my own. Okay. That's not a part of the deal. And what my father told me is certainly not a part of the deal. I did not sign any
no NDAs regarding your dad. Regarding
what my dad told me. So I'm free to say what he said,
Yes, you are. This is some really fascinating material, to put it mildly. I remember the BCCI scandal. That stunk. HSBC. Now we got Citi.
Citigroup is the CIA bank now.
Yeah. So far they've stayed.
That may be a big secret, but I just know. It's just like if you've been in the business, you know which banks it is, because I've worked. And then when it went away, because the government's against itself, Customs took the BCCI down, but that was the CIA bank, so they had to choose a new bank, and they got HSBC because they were a crooked bank already.
Oh my. And
I mean, if you look at the history of Citigroup, they're a crooked bank. Citigroup has stole money out of people's deposits before. I mean, they're a very crooked bank. They've been accused of money laundering. So, that's the kind of bank the CIA uses.
Let me ask you.
When that bank collapses, they just get a new one.
Yeah, I get it. Change partners and keep on dancing. What are we going to see with this joke in the White House? I mean, they put him in there for 4 years to do what he's done. I think create chaos, havoc, diversion, hate, all the rest of it. Where's this going to end up? He's not going to do another term. Do you see that?
Well, he might actually get another term. If they have a fair election, he would get another term. Okay. Because what has happened is the left has jumped the gun and gone too extreme to the left too fast.
Oh, they've gone full out Bolshevik communist. It's America's.
Right. Yeah, and the people are not prepared for that.
No, they're not. No.
So, but these people are the people who are part of the military-industrial complex, who paid campaigns of these Democratic candidates. It is the military-industrial complex that pays for their campaigns. Okay, because the Democrats want to get us into wars. You'll notice in the Democratic field, you'll notice that you have Tulsi Gabbard, who they repetitively cheat on her and undercut her. Even Google erased all her ads after one of the speeches and stuff. So they tried to cut her out of the debates and stuff, and it's because she's anti-war.
It's such an ugly freak show when you look at it in its totality. I don't want to sound like it's all over, but it sure feels like it's all over, Mitchell, for this country. We are in the hands of abject evil.
Yes, we are.
Wow.
It's the national security state.
Yeah.
You know? Or what they call the deep state. Yes, it's just a...
Yeah, national security state.
Welcome.
That's it. Thank you very much. Be safe. Talk to you next month. And if you need anything in the meantime, you know where to get me.
Okay. You take care, too. Okay? It's good talking to you.
Thanks, Mitchell. Always a pleasure. All right?
Okay.
Be well.
You're welcome.
Okay. Wow. There you go. Another amazing hour. Back tomorrow night, 21 from now. Hours, that is. Take care. Talk to you soon.